A young woman named Jessica needed an escape from her hectic life in the city. She found what seemed like the perfect solution: a quaint cottage listed on Airbnb, tucked away in the peaceful countryside. The photos promised tranquility and the reviews were glowing. It sounded like the ideal retreat. Jessica arrived at the cottage on a sunny Friday afternoon. As she drove up the gravel path, the sight of the ivy-covered stone walls and the thatched roof filled her with anticipation. Mrs. Thorne, the elderly host, welcomed her with a warm smile and gave her a brief tour of the property. Jessica noted the cozy decor, the creaky wooden floors, and the large inviting fireplace. But what really caught her attention was a narrow staircase leading up to the attic. "What's up with those stairs? Is it part of the rental space?" "Oh, that's just the attic. It's mostly used for storage. I keep it locked to prevent accidents. There's really nothing up there worth seeing. Best to stay in the more comfortable parts of the cottage." That evening, after a hearty meal and a few glasses of wine, Jessica settled by the fire with a book. The silence of the countryside was a stark contrast to the constant noise of the city. She found it incredibly soothing. As the night deepened, she began to feel drowsy and decided to call it a night. Jessica awoke in the middle of the night to a peculiar sound. It was a soft, rhythmic thumping coming from above. She dismissed it as the house settling or perhaps an animal in the attic. She pulled the covers tighter around herself and drifted back to sleep. The next day was serene and uneventful. Jessica spent the day exploring the nearby woods, taking photographs and simply enjoying the peace and quiet. But as night fell, the thumping returned louder and more insistent. It sounded like eerie footsteps. Determined to ease her mind, Jessica decided to investigate. She grabbed a flashlight and cautiously ascended the narrow staircase to the attic. The wooden steps creaked under her weight, and the air grew colder with each step. At the top, she found a heavy wooden door. With a deep breath, she pushed it open. The attic was a dark, dusty space filled with old furniture and forgotten relics. Cobwebs draped the corners, and the floorboards groaned beneath her feet. Jessica's flashlight beam scanned the room, revealing a large, ornate trunk pushed against the wall. It seemed out of place amongst all the clutter. Just as she was about to turn back, the door behind her slammed shut with a force that made her scream. Hard pounding, she tried the handle, but it wouldn't budge. She was trapped. Panic set in as she pounded on the door, shouting for help, but there was no response. The only sound that was persistent was the thumping now coming from the inside of the attic itself. Desperate, she approached the trunk. There was something about it that seemed significant. She found an old, rusted crowbar among the clutter, and she pried at the padlock until it snapped open. Inside, she discovered old clothes, toys, and a small leather-bound journal. The name Emily Thorne was scrawled on the cover in faded ink. Curiosity overpowered her fear, and she opened the journal. The entries detailed a young girl's life in the cottage, but as she read on, the tone grew darker. October 12th, 1924. I heard the footsteps again last night. Mother says it's just the wind, but I know better. There's something in the attic. October 19th, 1924. The noises are getting louder. I told Father, but he doesn't believe me. I'm scared to sleep alone. October 31st, 1924. I saw it. The Shadow Man. He comes at night, watching me from the corner of the room. He wants something, but I don't know what. A chill ran down Jessica's spine. She flipped through the remaining pages, but they were blank. A sudden draft blew through the attic, and she looked up to see a figure standing in the corner. It was a pitch-black, smoky shadow with glowing red eyes. Jessica's breath caught in her throat as the figure moved closer, its footsteps matching the thumping noise she had heard. Paralyzed with fear, she backed away, stumbling over the clutter.
Release me. Give me peace.
The words echoed in her mind, a desperate plea. Jessica's gaze fell back to the journal. She realized that Emily had been trying to warn future occupants. Summoning her courage, she asked the spirit how she could help him. The Shadow Man pointed to the trunk. Jessica frantically searched through the items, finding a hidden compartment beneath the false bottom. Inside was a small silver key wrapped in a worn-out folded piece of paper. The paper was a letter dated October 31st, 1924. It read,
Whoever finds this, the spirit in the attic is bound by the curse placed upon this house. The key must be returned to the grave of Emily Thorne to break the curse and set the spirit free. Beware the Shadow Man, for he seeks revenge on those who have wronged him.
Jessica knew what she had to do. The local cemetery wasn't far, but she needed to get out of the attic first. She used the key to unlock the door, feeling the oppressive presence of the Shadow Man watching her every move. She raced down the stairs and out of the cottage, clutching the key and letter tightly. The cold air stung her skin as she ran to the cemetery. Finding Emily Thorne's grave took time, but she finally spotted a weathered headstone under an old oak tree. With shaking hands, she placed the key on the grave and recited the words from the letter. The ground trembled, and a cold wind howled through the trees. For a moment, everything was still. Then a sense of peace washed over her. Back at the cottage, the oppressive atmosphere had lifted. The Shadow Man was gone, and the cottage felt warm and inviting once more. Despite this feeling, Jessica packed her things and left a note with Mrs. Thorne explaining what had happened. As she drove away, she glanced back at the cottage one last time. It seemed less menacing now and stood silent. A relic of a past that had finally been put to rest. Jessica knew she would never forget her time at the cottage, and the lesson that some secrets are meant to be uncovered, no matter how frightening they may be.